Well, welcome everybody. I can't see you unfortunately, but just want to a warm welcome to everybody to this online ACM. Obviously we can't meet in person and we're hugely disappointed about that. We were looking forward to that. It seems that every time we go to do a large event, we're thwarted by COVID on the eve of the event, and it was certainly the case in this case. Today we're going to have a relatively short format ACM because we know people are a little bit zoomed out. So the agenda will focus on the year that's been and the year ahead, obviously. And there'll be an opportunity at the end of that for some questions and answers from the floor. So please do ask us some questions and we'd encourage you to do that. There'll be a chat box if you just want to put your questions into that, then we can answer those. After that, there'll be a brief board update from our chair, Karen Silk, and then we'll follow that with an interview with Wayne McNee from LIC and Claire Walker from Sky City. And again, there'll be an opportunity for some questions and answers there as well. I'll start by handing over to Karen for her reflections on the year that's been. Karen.
Let me just get off mute. So, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. Hey, for those I haven't met before, I'm Karen Silk, Chair of SBC Advisory Board, and in my day job, I'm a member of the Westpac New Zealand executive team. It's a pleasure to be able to join you all today, even if it does have to be remotely. Look, when I reflect on our experience at Westpac, the conversations I've had with many of our customers and other SBC members over the past 12 months, whilst we in New Zealand have been able to avoid really many of the worst experiences we've seen globally from COVID, we haven't been immune to the flow-on effects across our economy and society. At a business level, those that have been able to maintain their presence, and many haven't, they've had to face into constrained markets, supply chain disruption, closed borders impacting on workforce numbers and access to skills, and obviously our employees contending with the trials of mixing personal and work needs in the home. And all of this has been at a time when demand for resources is increasing as we respond to the requirements for transformation in our economy. At a personal level, individual resilience and collective well-being are certainly being tested. And it's this, this is a regular topic of discussion in executive and board meetings and across the communities that we all operate in. It's important to acknowledge these challenges and continue to look for ways to support our people, customers and communities through these really uncertain times. Sustainable business practice is good business practice. And that's a point that's being increasingly acknowledged across the New Zealand business community and government. And so it's been a really busy year for SBC. The SBC membership continues to grow. We're now at 118 members, representing 34% of GDP, 111 billion of turnover, and nearly 180,000 jobs. We are 1 year into the execution of a strategy shaped by the contribution of many of you, and we thank you for that. This includes a continued focus on capacity building and training for SBC members, including our Sustainable Leadership Program with Catapult, which continues to grow with a fresh intake this year. We've had over 100 graduates since we launched in 2018, and through our partnerships with EY to deliver training on sustainability fundamentals to over 150 attendees, and Deloitte on specialised training for CFOs on climate risk. Over the past 12 months, SBC alongside the Climate Leaders Coalition have continued to advocate on climate action with government, with submissions both to the incoming government on climate action priorities and the Climate Change Commission. Investing in delivering a quality response to the latter has paid dividends, with 22 of the 26 recommendations made reflected in the final Commission advice. Under the strategy, our work will continue to grow in this area, and members will have the opportunity to engage further in the development of the government's response to the Commission's advice through the partnership established between MFE, SBC and CLC. We launched the low carbon freightway path earlier this year, and are now standing up the next iteration and scoping similar collaborations across our members for process, heat and agriculture, and you'll hear a bit more about that soon. Opportunities for structured collaboration like this on shared critical priorities was highlighted in our member survey, as it's seen as an approach that has historically supported innovation and supercharged collective progress across key issues faced by our members. And on the theme of collaboration, under our Thriving People work stream, we launched a new collaboration this year with over 60 leaders to explore the issues of diversity and inclusion, share the learnings and opportunities to collaborate to transform New Zealand workplaces into ones that are more inclusive, authentic, and really support people bringing their whole selves to work every day. Government agencies are also now supporting our call for a tripartite approach to planning for a fair, equitable and inclusive transition to New Zealand's decarbonisation via the upcoming emissions budgets. And we will look to support our members on collective action in this area. This year, the SBC team have delivered 23 events and webinars for members covering a range of topics and issues, including thought leadership pieces showcasing the work of our members, alongside the international speakers from the UK Climate Committee, BCSD Australia, and of course WBCSD. We would like to thank those of you who participated in our member survey earlier this year. As always, it continues to provide rich insights and reflections on how we're doing and areas you think we can do better on. It's been pleasing to see that our members have been really supportive of the vision, direction and program of work, and that nearly 80% of members expressed a high degree of satisfaction with the work done. Lastly, I'd also like to acknowledge the SBC team and other members of the advisory board. Collectively, this is a group who care about the impact that business has and can have in addressing the more pressing social and environmental issues of our time through action, not just words. They've worked with real care and diligence over the past 12 months to make sure members' voices are heard and learnings are shared. All of that with the view of enabling good governance and impactful business practices that address social and environmental outcomes alongside economic. So thank you guys for your contribution. I'll now hand over to Mike.
Thanks for those kind words, Karen. And it has been a very interesting year, hasn't it? So I'd like to start by echoing Karen's thanks to our members for maintaining their focus on environmental and social sustainability, even as economic sustainability has come to the fore over this last year. We've been really impressed with how people have continued to focus on the medium and long term, even as they've had to focus on the immediate survival of their companies and thriving in this quite challenging environment. And again, I'd also like to acknowledge the hard work of the team that I'm very privileged to lead, the SBC team. They bring their passion and professionalism to work every day, and the achievements that we've made over this last year are quite phenomenal for what I sometimes forget is a very small team. And again, I thank you also to the hard work that the SBC Advisory Board bring to us. Their insights are incredibly valuable. Well, what a roller coaster of a year it's been. At our last ACM way back in August of last year, I think we were all hopeful that 2021 would be a very different year. We were all talking about next year when we put 2020 behind us. And I think we're beginning to realise that the COVID crisis is likely to be with us for a while yet. And as New Zealand re-engages with the world, balancing our health, social and economic and environmental priorities is going to be challenging. And it's going to take both political and, very crucially, business leadership. So as we look ahead for the second year of our strategy, we'll look to maintain the momentum that we've built up over the past 12 months. And I have to say, when I listen to the list of things that have occurred over the last 12 months, it's a lot to maintain. But we've also got to keep maintaining our focus that we've had in our strategy on leadership, climate action, and thriving people. Fundamental to our strategy has been this focus on leadership, and that will continue, along with maintaining our current program of events, advocacy, collaborations, and training programs. We'll begin to up our game in terms of thought leadership and you've begun to see that over the last 6 months. That'll include raising the public profile of the SBC membership through a strengthened and renewed communication program. And it's my great pleasure to be able to welcome on the new lead on that, who only started last week, in fact. And a huge thank you and welcome to Rebecca Lowe for joining us last week. Championing businesses to be at the forefront of sustainability is a key part of enabling them to take action on climate change. And for the year to come, that includes connecting members to tackle shared challenges through our Taking the Lead dinners for council members and the Climate Change and Business Conference, which is now on the 3rd and 4th of March. We decided to push it out to that time because we are hopeful that by that stage, New Zealand will be moving into a slightly different approach to how it deals with large events. It also includes sharing the latest sustainability insights through our ongoing Taking the Lead webinar series, and of course, our ongoing Better Futures report that we do in partnership with Colmar Brunton. As well as building sustainability capability through our flagship Sustainability Leadership Program, which was mentioned earlier, our collaborations with Circularity on their circular economy training, and a new partnership with BLAB on their impact improvement program. Climate action is accelerating, and it needs to. As the IPCC's 6th assessment report showed, if we don't accelerate our action now, we face the very real prospect of a 3 to 4 degree world. And as the IPCC have said, our future is now firmly in our hands. Decisions that are made in the coming year will determine whether New Zealand bends the curve and plays its part to keep within the 1.5 degree target. That means that these emissions budgets that have been set out will guide the pathway to our country's emissions reductions for the next 15 years. And the government's emissions reduction plan, which we hope to see in the next few weeks, must put in place policies that signal a clear and enduring pathway to a low emissions and climate resilient future. SBC and CLC stand in a unique position to influence the direction of travel. As you heard from Karen earlier, the government is listening to what we're saying, and that's really down to you. It's down to the credibility that you bring to this brand called SBC and to CLC as well. And we'll continue to act as our members' collective voice to that end. We'll also continue to work with you to convert ambition into action, bringing together collaborations on the big challenges such as adaptation, partnering with others to lift our capability across the network in areas such as climate-related financial disclosures and the circular economy, and leveraging our international network and insights to ensure that we're empowering you to walk the talk on climate action. The emissions reduction plan must also ensure that the transition to a zero carbon economy is fair, equitable, and inclusive. And it's within that context of that just transition that SBC has a critical role to play through its Thriving People pillar. An immediate priority is to continue our advocacy for a cohesive, systems-led strategy for the just transition, helping to ensure policy settings enables our members to bring their communities and people with them as we transition towards a thriving, sustainable and zero carbon economy. In the year ahead, we'll build on the work to move business beyond diversity and inclusion to support members' leadership and build skills and capabilities to operationalise just transition pathways within their organisations. And I really want to call out the work that that group has been doing, led very capably by Rob, but also with the support of a small group of our members, to really bring about what is an entirely new area for us, not just diversity inclusion, but the entire area of thriving people. The pace of change in the nature of work is accelerating, and this change poses disproportionate risks to those already vulnerable. We'll be partnering with members to lift capability, to building future-ready skills and workforces to prepare workers and help them stay connected to meaningful work in a changing economy, which is only going to accelerate as we go through the climate transition. Throughout all of this, we're very aware that our members are continuing to have to manage through the challenges of the COVID pandemic. And that means we'll continue to be nimble and willing to adapt our approaches to the often abrupt changes that COVID brings. We're very much looking forward to working with you in the year ahead as we all continue to mobilise New Zealand's most ambitious businesses to build a thriving and sustainable future for all. What I'd like to do now is open up the floor for questions and answers. I think we've got about 10 minutes for this, and I haven't got anything on the Q&A yet. So I might just turn it across to Karen for any other reflections that she would like to make and perhaps provoke some conversation in this space around particularly the year ahead.
sorry, unmute again. There's certainly, whilst there's been a lot of activity over the last 12 months, a lot of that I would describe as, when I think about the announcements the government has made, there's a lot of how do you bring that to life that will happen this year. So a lot of investigation, evaluation, and advice provided. How does that actually turn into action is going to be important. And the thing that we've been trying to impress on the engagement with government is that collaboration is the thing that's going to be most critically important here. No one party can transform an economy and do it in a way that creates as little disruption as you possibly can. And so government working with business, business and government working with the communities that we operate in, and I think also R&D and how do we bring tertiary education sector into this as well is going to be absolutely critical. If New Zealand's going to be able to navigate their way through the changes that are required in a way that not only de-risks issues for our economy and society, but actually supports our ability to take advantage of some of the change that can be made.
Thanks, Karen. That's really useful. A few questions are coming through, and the first one's from Jess Roger from IAG. She's saying, it was really disappointing to see the delay to the emissions reduction plan and the clean cars policy from government. Do you think SBC has a role to ensure that government understands the importance of prioritising this work, even in a COVID environment? I might just lead off with an answer to that one, Karen, and maybe if you wanted to pitch in as well. I agree, it was very disappointing that, that there was a need for that delay. We had actually asked for a small delay to allow Auckland to have some time to adapt to lockdown, but we were talking about a few weeks. To see it being pushed out to May was surprising. We are now working alongside government to say, well, then let's make the most of this to make sure that what that ERP is very ambitious and actually meets the ambition that's set out both within the legislation, but also the ambition that the Climate Change Commission has set out for the government. And so over the next little while, once we understand that the ERP draft will come out in the first few weeks of October, I understand that that will be a little bit dependent on Auckland opening up again. As soon as it does, obviously, we've got a process for engaging with you all to ensure that we make sure that our response to that keeps the clarity of vision that we've had all the way through it and the ambition and the pace that we need to see. Karen, did you have any comments on that question?
Yeah, look, I think you're right, Mike. Lockdown, whilst for many companies has gone more smoothly this time than the first time round, as we were all better prepared for that. It does create its own unique challenges and for businesses, and I think these are such important topics. You need to have the space to be able to respond to them appropriately with real care and thought going into it. So we were supportive of having a small delay, as Mike said, to the release. Yeah, it is surprising that they've extended it to May, but that also provides sufficient, I think, opportunity for us to have real impact in terms of understanding and providing constructive and challenging feedback where it's required.
I think that's right, Karen. I describe us as being honest friends. We'll call it where we see it, and if we think that means that the ambition's not there, we'll call that. The next question says, action now is a key focus at the moment. How is SBC going to support members to drive real action within their businesses, their suppliers and communities? I might just start off with a comment on how we're planning to do that, but Karen will probably have a strategic view on this as well. I completely agree with that. And I think one of the things that we came to realise at the beginning of this year was that our hope that there might be a sequenced approach to some of this is not true. It's all of these big issues are happening in a rush at the same time, which is one of the reasons that we made the difficult decision to seek support for the idea of increasing fees at the high end of the membership for the first time in 7 years. We did that so that we could build capability, so that we were able to be both advocacy focused, as we continue to need to be, but also continue to focus on the actions that we need to take with our members. This will turn up in a few ways. The first is those collaborations that Karen spoke about earlier. So whether or not that's collaborations around the clean car work that was mentioned earlier by Jess, collaborations around other areas of transport like the heavy freight group, some new collaborations that we've set up around process heat and around agriculture. Those are some specific areas in the climate action space where we can get companies to come together and act collectively to achieve faster pace. We're doing exactly the same thing in the thriving people space and also in the leadership space. So that's the collaboration area. But the other is to make sure that we continue to get alongside individual companies to help them with their individual journeys and help them to accelerate that, which is why we're building a bit more capability so that we can do both of those things at the same time, which unfortunately we were having to make a choice as to which we were doing. So you'll see a lot more engagement at the company level over this year as well. Over to you, Karen.
Yeah, I think Mike's made some very good points there. As many of you in business already know and understand, that nothing ever happens in the way that you want it to happen. We've got really big meaty topics that we are being asked to participate in, lobby and influence outcomes. And that's required quite serious prioritisation. Now that prioritisation has also been done taking into account the feedback we've had from many of you as members. So our strategy is very clear on the priorities, the priority areas. They are reflective of what members overall have said are the priorities for them, and the team are very focused on building out actions in a collaborative way that involves members and allows you the ability to participate in those forums on the way through. So I would actively encourage you to take advantage of being part of those forums. It is part of the learning and aiding process that goes with that. And as Mike also said, the other area for us was continuing to build out on the communication that we have with you at an individual and collective level. As we worked through over the past 12 months, really refining that strategy and how it would turn into tangible actions. Some of that individual conversation was, I wouldn't call it, I'd say deprioritised, in order for us to be able to stand back and do that thinking and get the collective actions happening. The team have now built more space in this year to being able to have that individual engagement, and you're also utilising the resources of the advisory board moving forward to help with that as well, because it's a one team approach that we want to take that to that. So opportunities will be created. I encourage you to engage with the team, and I also encourage you to reach out where you believe you need help as well.
Thanks, Karen. We've got a question here. Says, thanks for the great work in year one of the new strategy. Thank you for that. How will we ensure our engagements with government move from providing policy advice into establishing partnerships for action? And how will we measure the success of that over year two? Thanks. Really good question. I'll just quickly answer that one to say that the partnerships piece is the hardest part of this, as you can imagine. What we're doing is we're picking off the priority areas to go into detailed partnerships on, areas like agriculture, such as we mentioned before, transport and process heat, and recognising that we won't be able to partner in all areas. So a prioritisation is really important in this. I'll be honest, they take a lot of work, these partnerships, and the pace at which they're happening in parallel means that we are sometimes stretched. And this is where you come in. This is where if companies can engage on those priorities, and we've had good take up on all of those ones I've just picked up, then it's not just about the work of the SBC team, it's about the work of the network, and that's where the power comes in, because that's where the capability sits. It sits within our network. So I really do encourage people to lean into those areas. You'll see that's within our strategy. We've talked a lot about that. You'll see in Pānui, we talk about those a lot. If you are interested in being involved in those, please do lean into them, because that's going to be critical. In terms of measuring success, it really comes down to us looking back over the year to see, did we achieve what we set out to do? And if I think about what that will mean for those, it will be quite different for each of those different areas within climate action, which I'm focusing on at the moment because that's where the biggest challenges are, if I'm frank. And so each of them has a different set of KPIs for it, but we'll be describing those back when we report back to you in a year's time. Karen, did you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, look, I would also just add to that we've taken a view that SBC doesn't need to do all of that on its own, and we are actively collaborating with other like-minded organisations and groups across New Zealand to ensure that we work together to get the outcomes that we're looking for, because it creates a stronger voice, but it also helps in supporting turning things into action and the ideas into action, rather than it all being SBC doing their piece and other bodies like Sustainable Finance Forum, the Circle, work we're doing with EY and others, working together. We can share the load, and you will benefit from some of those partnerships as well.
Very much so. And I just maybe also talk about the value of us belonging to the Business New Zealand network. This is where we can leverage that relationship as well. And we've done that in 3 ways over the last year, and we're looking to do it in an additional way going forward. The first is obviously around policy. So I think you're probably aware that we worked very collaboratively on the ERP to make sure that we were as joined up as possible, so that government were under no illusions about the ambition of business as a whole, business specifically of SBC, but also for organisations like the New Zealand Business Energy Council coming out strongly as well. And we'll continue to do that, because being able to speak with a strong business voice, I think, is very important. The second area is using that network to create momentum around particular areas of focus for us, and that's been particularly true in the leadership space. So really making sure that we're able to not just get out to this network, but beyond it, through the communications that we can do through Business New Zealand. The new area that we're going into is that we're in the process of recruiting a person who will be actually hired by Business New Zealand, but will be based in SBC, to act as a boundary spanner, to act as somebody who will take the wonderful work that we've been doing over these past 20 years and look how that could be applied at an SME level. And this also, I suppose, speaks to that point that was made before around how we can work with your suppliers and your value chains. So this is connecting it up from the other end to say, how can we work with that much broader group? Because you have to remember, we have 118 members, Business New Zealand has 15,000. So it's about reaching out through those Business New Zealand networks and reaching companies that very often haven't thought about sustainability before. But we think this will have a very positive benefit to SBC. Possibly we might end up with some new members, but we think it'll be very positive for New Zealand, because we're reaching that broader range of businesses out through the network. And as I say, that's something that Business New Zealand has prioritised, and Kirk Hope and his team have put together the capability to allow that to lock into what we're doing. We've got a question here saying, can you expand a bit more on the climate adaptation focus and what this is going to look like from SBC? Yes. So we've already got a lot happening in the climate mitigation space, but we're about to open another front into climate adaptation. That will turn up in 2 ways. The first is our response to the government's action on climate adaptation, which will begin early next year. So there will be a bit of a crunch point for us, which is that we will still be providing inputs to the ERP process, while simultaneously beginning to input to what the government's initial response will be around climate adaptation. But the second piece is the genuine leadership that SBC can show here. Companies like IAG and others have been talking about, and Karen's company as well, Westpac and others, have been taking a look forward for quite some time now to say, this is a very significant issue. We are going to be living in a 1.5 to 2 degree world for a period of time, whatever else we do. Therefore, adaptation is critical. So we are going to be doing more in this area, and it's as part of the expansion of SBC, we've opened up some capability in that area, and Lorette Simonet will be leading out our work on that. Again, it's an area, if you've got interest in climate adaptation, please get a hold of myself or Lorette, because that work will start beginning next year. So, you know, we haven't got enough on our plate. We thought we'd just open up and do some more work as well. So critically to that is really going to be your involvement, because we will be quite stretched, particularly in that first 3 months. But it's a very important area, and I think that SBC needs to have a voice in that space. Right. I think we may have run out of questions. If there's no final questions, what I may do is pass over to Karen to kick on to talk about the elections that have just been. Thanks everybody for the question.
Sure, thanks, Mike. Hey, look, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to acknowledge, first of all, our existing board members. They've done a lot of work to support Mike and the team on the development of the strategy, and have individually taken on additional roles on advisory subgroups for each of the pillars included within the strategy. This is all done on a voluntary basis on top of our day jobs, and it's against the backdrop of a year that's had a lot of challenges. So it's I think it's important that we acknowledge our board members for the work that they've done. So the board members include Alice Andrew from Foresight, Mark England from Genesis, Wayne McNee, who you will hear from shortly from LIC, Peter Simons from DB, Carol Ward from Zespri, David Benatar, long-standing board member from the Warehouse Group, Kirk Hope from Business New Zealand, Malcolm Johns from Christchurch Airport, Gareth Marriott from OCS, Captain David Morgan, of course, from Air New Zealand, Claire, who you will also hear from shortly, Walker from Sky City, and Jerry Ward from EY. So a big thank you from all of us for the work that you've done. As part of the Constitution, as you will all know, every year a third of the board, the longest standing members, must stand down. And this year we had 4 vacancies to fill, and that included 1 position that was vacated last year due to a resignation, and that was obviously Volker. I'd like to thank everyone who put themselves up for nomination, which, we do like to test them, and it involves pitching their wares on a 60-second video, which is always a great joy for those of you that have had to have done it before. It was inspiring to see that 3 of our board members that had to stand down re-stood for election, so a really big thank you for that. And we're joined by 2 new candidates, and we love seeing people put their hands up for these roles. In addition, the liaison delegate position that has a term of 2 years, that was also up for re-election this year, and there were 3 candidates standing for this position, including our incumbent, Jerry Ward. So 2 really tight run elections, and we thank you again for all of those that stood. The results are as follows. For the advisory board positions, I'm happy to say Captain David Morgan from Air New Zealand, David Benatar from the Warehouse Group, and Gareth Marriott from OCS have all been re-elected, and they will be joined this year by a new advisory board member, Dean Fraser from Ngāi Tahu. Welcome, Dean, who has been newly elected. For the liaison delegate representative position, I'm very happy to say that Jerry Ward from EY has been re-elected, so it'll be great having Jerry continue on with the team. So welcome to all our new members, and a big welcome back to our existing board members. I really look forward to working with you over the next 12 months. On behalf of the members, we've got a lot to do, as you will have heard today from Mike. It's a really critical time, I think, here in New Zealand over the next 12 months, and everyone is really up for supporting the team to make a real difference. Mike, I think it's now back to you for a kōrero with Wayne and Claire.
Karen. So it's and both Wayne, of course, the CEO of LIC, and Claire, the Chief People and Culture Officer, are members of the SBC Advisory Board and sit on the governance groups for our leadership and thriving people pillars, respectively. So it's great to have them both here to join us and to share their organisational journeys this last year and the vision for the road ahead. So welcome to you both. Before I start, I'll just say, if you have any questions as we go through, please put them in the chat box again. I'm sure that they would both be very happy to get any questions from the floor. But I'll just lead off with one for you, Claire. It's been a challenging year for many companies in Aotearoa, particularly for those with tourism and hospitality interests. How has your focus on sustainability sustained Sky City through the COVID crisis and supported its people?
Thanks, Mike. Kia ora e te whānau. Look, I think what I would say is that the COVID pandemic has certainly impacted everyone in some way, but clearly the implications have been far greater for some sectors. And it certainly feels that the tourism and hospitality sector has been at the eye of the hurricane, and we've certainly felt the impact significantly. Look, an analogy that others have used, I think, is an accurate one, that essentially everyone, as a result of COVID, has taken a step down a rung on the ladder. And unfortunately, what that means is those who are already at the bottom of the ladder, the consequences have been far greater. So that we have seen those communities who were already disadvantaged, unfortunately, as a result of COVID, being further disadvantaged. So what we're seeing is, as you'll be aware, women, for example, disproportionately making up the number of the recently unemployed, as well as those who already had lack of certainty around employment, so casual and part-time employees. So what we've seen in our business is the flow-on impact of that in terms of mental health and well-being, and that's an area we've been really focused on just in terms of supporting our employees, and a lot of initiatives that have gone into supporting well-being. But when I think about sustainability and the impact of COVID, it's, some of it has been positive in a sense that we've had to become far more targeted in our investment in sustainability. And that's not a bad thing. We've had to really get to the heart of what is material for our business and for our stakeholders. And it's probably removed some of what I describe as a bit of a scattergun approach that we may have had. So we've had to get really real about what is important and where are we going to invest. But really, in terms of how we've supported our people, we've been focused on offering security of employment to the extent that we can. Obviously, we had some really significant restructuring earlier in 2020. And despite the really challenging trading conditions, that's really been the most important thing we've been able to offer as the business has recovered from the lockdowns of 2020. Pleased to say we're obviously in an extended lockdown at the moment. Despite that, we've been able to preserve employment for all of our employees, and that's really been our focus. But I would say, really preserving employment for our people is about having a sustainable business, and social license is something that's always been important to Sky City, and it's arguably more important than ever as we navigate the pandemic.
Thanks, Claire. Wayne, looking back over your tenure at 8 years so far at LIC, and as it draws to a close, when you reflect back on what's been achieved in terms of transforming the cooperative, what role has sustainability played in that transformation?
Thanks, Mike, and kia ora tātou. Well, LIC's made huge strides in sustainability over the past 8 years for the environment, for our business and for our people, particularly in the last 4, I'd have to say. We issue our first sustainability report next week, which is a great milestone for us, which will record the progress that we've been making, and I'm looking forward to releasing that and announcing it. We've made significant changes to our environmental footprint, introducing electric and hybrid vehicles, changing our approach to travel significantly, implementing waste management systems in our laboratories, in our farms, and in our offices, which has been quite a big change for us. But more importantly, through the introduction of advanced genomic technologies in our breeding program, after investing $78 million in research, our ongoing research into methane reduction using genetics is making a real difference to the methane output of the dairy industry. And actually, we've been doing some work around adaptation as well, looking at cows that will be more tolerant to heat as the climate changes. But at the same time, we've also transformed the cooperative, so it's in a very strong financial position. We ended the year with cash in the bank to invest and are actively looking for investments. But last and certainly not least, we've developed programs like our Well Aware program for our people, tools to help them with their health and well-being, which has been particularly important through COVID. Although we're an essential business and we're able to keep operating, there was still a lot of challenges in delivering those operations through the season. So having prepared those programs in advance has stood us in really great stead in our LIC balance program. So yeah, look, we're in good shape, and I think I'm leaving the place in a good legacy.
Good to hear. I've got a question for both of you, but maybe I'll start with Claire first. What lessons did you take from the past 18 months, and how's that informed how you're going to address the climate crisis? So looking at the crisis we're going through, has that changed your view on how we would address the climate crisis?
Thanks, Mike. Look, I've always seen the importance of putting people at the centre of how we respond to the climate crisis. I sort of take a fairly simple view of, really without people at the centre, sort of what's the point? It comes back to why are we so focused on obviously the climate change and the climate crisis. It's about ensuring a future for our people, right? So I'm really heartened that our SBC vision refers to a fair, equitable and inclusive transition to a zero emissions economy. And that's something that I take real heart from, that we understand at SBC that people are clearly at the centre of that. So then if I think about things specifically that I've learned over the last 18 months from our experience with COVID, I think, in needing to ensure that we include employees in the decisions that are about them. So it's a sort of, nothing about us without us kind of mantra. And for us, that's been about ensuring that we are engaging with all of our different stakeholders in the people, on the people side of our business, but not only employees, but unions that represent our employees, iwi, community, and our just, ensuring that they are all consulted in the decision making. And if I think about the climate crisis, employees really do need to feel, and communities really do need to feel, that this transition isn't being done to them, but that they have some control over their future. I think that's something that really goes to mental health and well-being too, is the sense that you have some autonomy and you have some ability to make decisions that impact you, or be involved in decisions that impact you. So that sort of collaborative approach, taking a human-centered approach to the transition, will absolutely result in a more engaged and skilled workforce, which clearly benefits our business, but it'll also ensure stronger community relationships. So when I think about a practical example from COVID, we've had some great learnings in terms of our push to have our employees vaccinated. And certainly for our business, but I think we all appreciate that really, that's the way out of the pandemic, and certainly the current sort of restrictions is vaccination levels. So we've had great success when we've really thought about how we target the different diverse communities within our business, employee communities, and targeting communications to those particular communities by using those informal leaders from within our business to communicate directly in ways that have the greatest impact. And I think about the way we've tried to make it really easy for employees to access vaccinations. We've included whānau and colleagues in vaccination events on site. We've partnered with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei to target our Māori and Pacifica employees who are undervaccinated relative to other communities. And we've really emphasised collective action and personal accountability. So if I think about, that's just one example specific example related to COVID, but it's really emphasised a lot of the things that we can absolutely apply to climate change, the climate crisis, in terms of how we have this need for collective action, but also personal accountability in terms of changing behaviours. So look, you have to find some things that some learnings you can take from the really challenging times we've had. And I think for me, it's about the need to take our people with us, take our employees with us from a business perspective, and ensure that they are absolutely empowered to be part of the behavioural change that we need to see.
Fantastic point there, Claire. I think that's really important. And something we probably need to be making clear to government as well, which is it's great to have bold ambitions, but if you don't bring the people through with you, you've lost. I think that engagement is really important. Wayne, what about yourself? I mean, it's been a challenging 18 months. And, this crisis has been, to actually use the word as it should probably be used, unprecedented. It's often used in other ways. Are there any lessons or thoughts that you've drawn from this that relate to the climate crisis?
Yes, Mike. I mean, I think I strongly support what Claire said. It was great to get such good engagement from our people as we went through last year and into this year, and getting hundreds of people on our Teams calls and getting great feedback and lots of questions, and getting people really engaged in how we were going to respond to the challenges and getting their input was great. So I very strongly support that. I mean, the only other thing I would add, we've reacted to the COVID crisis quickly, made decisions fast, really treated it as a crisis. The climate crisis is a crisis as well, and there's a tendency, because it's a longer run challenge, to let things slip and not make decisions that need to be made and just think that they can be pushed and pushed and pushed. I think we're seeing very clearly from the world around us that we can't let those decisions keep sliding. We need to act as if we're in a crisis and make the hard decisions and not push them into the future. So I think we can take some of the lessons we learned from our experience with COVID and apply them with some urgency in this case as well.
That's a very good point. And one of the things that I've observed is things that we thought would be impossible prior to COVID turned out to be possible. And yet we don't seem to be taking that same can-do approach to this crisis, which I think is interesting. There's a follow-up question I'd like either one of you or both of you to maybe think about here, which is agree that taking people on the journey is key, but there is an extent to which decisions will need to be made for people. So how do we strike this balance correctly?
Well, look, I think you can only do that by involving and asking people. The reality is people don't change their behaviours. When you only take a directive approach, nobody ever changed anything about their behaviour because they were told they must. I mean, it's simple kind of psychology, isn't it? So it's that balance between there is a real time imperative here. It's urgent, isn't it? But at the same time, to get the best outcome, you simply need to take the time to bring people with you and to consult and to be collaborative in your approach.
Yeah, I mean, a good example similar to Claire's with vaccination in our essential parts of our business where people are working in labs, and we encouraged people to be vaccinated. We gave them information, we gave them opportunity to be vaccinated, and we've got over 90% of people vaccinated in those labs, and I think we'll get close to 100 because those that aren't are very much being encouraged by their colleagues now. But yeah, just providing information, and people will come on the journey with you if you involve them in the process and give them a chance.
Pretty good answer. I'd also just chime in and say that I think that the approach that we've taken through our consultation processes, where we put a lot of energy into listening to people and recognising that in the end we will need to strike a balance, is not a bad model. I've been really impressed with the degree to which companies and individuals have really engaged with that process and then swung in behind where the compromises are, really, I suppose. And so I do wonder if that's an approach that we should be encouraging government to take as well. Here's a good question for you. Wayne and Claire, what's your business's biggest sustainability related achievement in the past year?
I'll go first this time, maybe. Look, I think we've been doing a massive trial into methane reduction in dairy animals. And as I said, we can do a lot of things within our own business, reducing our environmental footprint. But the dairy industry is a big contributor through methane production. So that piece of work, which we trialled with our main competitor, we got together with them, got together with government to get some funding, and that'll be massive if we can pull that off. So that for us has been the biggest one. And actually working with our major competitor, we normally fight like cats and dogs in the market. We actually just got together and said, hey, there's a bigger game here. So that's been our biggest one.
Fantastic.
Look, I would say just to balance things out, one of the things I think our organisation is most proud of and has achieved the greatest improvement over the last sort of 6 to 12 months is around our embracing of Te Ao Māori within Sky City and the genuine partnership that we have developed with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei in Auckland. To the extent that, as I say, we were able to work with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei to help get our Māori employees vaccinated recently. So it's an area where I would say the business has been working for several years, but the approach that we have taken has been extremely genuine and authentic. So we've had to sort of fight the typical business kind of imperative to get things done quickly and just, to be very, very action oriented. And what is required is for us to actually take a far more kind of Māori worldview of how you actually make progress in this space, which has been really challenging, but we've made really good progress and genuine, authentic progress there.
Thank you. Those are great answers. I'm going to read out David Benatar's comment here because I think it's an interesting one. I think he's talking about the previous question, which he said, which is what a great question. Taking people onto the journey versus making decisions they need to follow. Hard question to answer. How did we get people to stop smoking? And I think it speaks to, I suppose, the question around behaviour change, doesn't it? And I wondered, Claire, I know you've done a lot of work on this and thought a lot about behaviour change and how you do bring people with you. Do you want to maybe just make a few comments about the lessons that you've learned over this period of time and how that might relate to the challenges of climate action?
Well, look, I see it in quite simple terms. People will only change their behaviour when they see what is in it for them. People are motivated by understanding that there's a benefit to them. And I know that people don't change their behaviour when you take a really punitive approach. And when I say what people will change their behaviour when they see what's in it for them, I don't mean in a really materialistic sense. But if I go back to my kind of vaccination example, our people have turned out in really large numbers to be vaccinated when we have enabled them, allowed them to bring their whānau with them, to bring their, come with your bubble. So it's about tapping into the why, and the why is different for different communities. So you really do have to take the time to listen and genuinely understand what the motivating factors are. And when people can see that, they're far more compelled to change. And that might be as simple as saying, that dealing with climate change is about ensuring a future for your children or your children's children. It's understanding what motivates different individuals and really enabling them to see the pathway for them that can be quite a individual and personalized pathway.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. I'm going to ask you one last big question, which I think is a great question. Maybe I'll start with you, Wayne. What's the next frontier of sustainability? What sort of issues do you think will be big in 2022 that you're preparing for now?
It is a big question, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so much on at the moment, so many challenges that we need to really keep up the ambition, really keep up the focus, work closely with government, show leadership, so business is prepared to show leadership in this area and keep right at the forefront of that kind of engagement and show government and whoever is in power that we want to work together, and these are long-term challenges with long-term solutions. And reflecting on what Claire said, really bringing people with us on this journey and helping them understand the benefits for them and their children and their children's children. So I think it's just really keeping the focus and the ambition.
Thanks, Wayne. What about you, Claire? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I was really pleased to hear you, Mike, talk to the adaptation being a new work stream for us, and I really think that is the next really big kind of, or the next frontier, if you like. And it's really challenging because I think for a lot of us, there is a sense of when you move to talking about adaptation, it almost feels like you've given up. And it's that sort of psychology of being able to shift to, we can do both things at the same time. That's not an admission that it's, that our goals and ambitions around, halting climate change and the impacts are not possible to achieve. It's simply saying we need to be really pragmatic here and say at the same time we need to be thinking about adaptation. So I think it's a really important area, and it's really challenging for a whole bunch of reasons. It's really hard, it's complex, it relies on innovative solutions, but also that sort of psychology around being able to get your head in that space isn't about giving up or you've failed or we're moving on from our previous ambitions.
Both and.
Correct.
Yes,
yeah.
indeed. A huge thank you to both of our panelists today, to Claire and Wayne. Thank you so much. Those are fantastic insights, and really appreciate you making the time today. Karen, I'm going to pass back to you.
Thanks, Mike. And yes, thanks, Wayne and Claire. Look, it's always great to hear from members about direct experience and actions that are being taken. So thank you very much for that. Hey, to everyone, look, we look forward to engaging with you on the emissions reduction plan consultation over the coming weeks and unfortunately months. But look, that gives us a great opportunity to provide really good, well thought through feedback. So let's make the most of that. There are a number of upcoming webinars that the team will be running for you. So please, as I said earlier, take the time to participate in those. We have an opportunity to get some really good speakers together, and the team aren't letting the inability to get together physically get in the way. And so on the 7th of October, virtually, is the next opportunity for you to engage with the SBC team. And that's to hear the latest thinking and emerging trends in sustainability with the WBCSD Vice Chair, Karen James. So Karen is the Group Chief Executive of ERM, the largest pure play sustainability consulting firm in the world. They have 5,200 staff across 47 countries. She has over 25 years of experience in sustainability and consulting across a broad range of sectors. So I think there'll be something in there for everyone. She'll be talking about business resilience and preparing for future shocks. Obviously a point being made by Wayne and Claire in their comments here today. Karen's an excellent speaker and a must join. So I think Jay has just shared the link with everybody on the call. So once again, thank you for joining us virtually. Thank you for your continued commitment on the important topic of sustainability and being part of the SBC family. It's hard work, as we all know, to shift the dial on sustainability, but honestly, the momentum that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years in particular in New Zealand and within the business community in New Zealand is huge, and it is largely down to the contribution of people like yourselves. So not only thank you to the SBC team and the advisory board, but thank you to you, our members, for everything that you do every day in your organisations. And with that, we'll now draw proceedings here to a close. Thank you for joining us. Ngā mihi. Have a great day.